Hey, what's up everyone? It's Redundant Pancake. Welcome to my very first devlog video. If you watched my intro video, then you know that I'm actually late. I was supposed to put out a video once a week. I already filled that on the first week. Congratulations for me. Slow clap, please. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Turns out that trying to do too much in your life at once, something has to give. And of course, this YouTube channel is just for fun. So, you know, trying to get your house ready to sell is a lot of work. And, you know, I kind of misjudged that amount of work. And I didn't have time to shoot this video or edit the video. But that doesn't mean I didn't make any progress towards my prototype. In fact, I spent a lot of time last week prototyping and I made something quite fun. I almost spent a few hours every day prototyping and I think I got something pretty great. It ended up being much more of a basketball game than I thought it would be, but it's still fun and I have something playable for you all that I'll show in the end of this video. I'll show some clips throughout actually, and of course I'll share the link below so you guys can try it out. Anyway, most of the days are pretty similar to each other. I work from home, I'm a programmer, so I sit behind this desk almost every day for at least 8 hours, and now that I'm doing this prototype series even more. And of course I like to play games, so you know, this is pretty much my entire life, and I don't not like it, to be honest. In order to get out of the house, I have a dog, so I walk him every morning. His name is Bernie. You know, I get some time to think about my prototype, to think about what I'm doing and where I'm heading. Not just with the prototype, but also in life. It's great. I recommend everyone getting a dog and go out for a walk. Or just go for a walk. You don't need to get a dog. Whatever. But yeah, drank lots of coffee, made lots of coffee, waited for a lot of coffee. You know, coffee is the thing that keeps this motor oiled and going. But yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. So I started off by creating a scene, a simple character, you know, and I, like any good programmer, of course, Googled straight away how to set up a character. I have made stuff in Unity before, so it wasn't my first rodeo, but of course I like to look things up. And the very first choice that I actually had to make was, am I going to use Rigidbody for my character, or am I going to use the player controller? And after doing a little bit of research and already knowing a little bit about this, is that I went with a player controller. So why? The difference between a Rigidbody and a player controller, for those who don't know, is a Rigidbody is a readily available component that you can add to your object inside of Unity, and it will simulate the physics according to preset variables made by the Unity engine. So it will adhere to the Unity engine, physics engine, pretty much. A player controller does none of that. You have to program everything yourself. So I hear you say, but Pancake, why the fuck would you want to program that yourself if you can just use the simulated physics from Unity? Well, that's true for a lot of things, especially if you want to make a whimsical video game, but I want tight controls, and tight controls means I have to program it myself, because you can tune a Rigidbody as much as you want. In the end, you can never get the exact desired effect as you can with a player controller. And obviously, like, basic controls is not that hard to do with a player controller. The big upside is that your player controller doesn't automatically interact with everything else, whereas a Rigidbody does. So if something bumps into your character with a Rigidbody, it will react to that because it's, you know, simulated physics, whereas a player controller will not react. You have to program that. So that's the upside, but that's also a downside because you have to do more. But I chose a player controller because it's in the name, it's a player controller, so that makes sense. So I added the player controller component. I looked up a quick script online, adjusted some things, and we had a moving player. So that was pretty much my day one. I am using the old input system, but for now, that was it. Day one complete, I had a movable character, that's all I wanted. Of course, I had to add some sass to my character and put my own face on it because, hey, why not, right? I had to, the thing is, if you use one of those capsules as a character, then you need to know what your forward-facing vector is, and you just either put like 2 dots as eyes, or people put something to recognize what the front of your character is, right? And I obviously just put a square with my face on it. So then, day 2, I had to add camera. I've programmed cameras before, and the basics of camera movement is very simple to program. Advanced stuff is rather difficult. Especially when you run into things like, do I want my camera to go through objects, or do I want it to collide with objects and then zoom in automatically? And that's all programmable. I actually know how to do that, but it's a lot of work. And for prototyping, that's really not something I wanted to deal with at all. I just wanted to slap on a camera and go. So I'm using Cinemachine camera. Is that what it's called? Yep, Cinemachine. It's a plugin in Unity that you can download in the package manager. So I added that, looked up a quick video on how to do a basic third-person camera, and it worked quite quickly. So that was nice. Easy to set up. It has exactly what you want. You can add a collider to it that automatically fixes all the colliding issues that you might have with objects, and you can tweak that to your own liking. So that's it. I have a movable character. I can move it around with WASD, and I can rotate it with my camera and look around. So what's next? Let's get a basketball in the game. And this is where the Rigidbody comes in, because the basketball, I want to be simulated by physics. I want it to interact when it bounces against things automatically. When I touch it, when I shoot it, it needs to just react and act as a normal physics object in the world when it's being a basketball. But then comes my next issue. I need to add curvature to my shot. So there's a couple ways you can calculate physics. You can do it the whimsical way. You can just add force to your object and see where the hell it goes. But it's very random, and it's also based on the input of your character, and a lot of variables come into play and you don't have any control, kind of like what you did with your player controller with your character. So I know that there are mathematical functions that allow you to move a ball on a certain curvature the same way every time, but that's not exactly how I wanted it, because I don't want it to be a kinematic object that, I don't know if kinematic is the right word, but I don't want it to be an object that moves along this set path necessarily. I want it to be calculated based on, how heavy this object is, what the downwards gravity is. And then add the right amount of force for that curvature, the max height that you want to reach. So I found this wonderful video by Sebastian Lague. Sebastian Lague. I've actually subscribed to him a long time ago, and I really enjoy his videos. But he basically has a video on this, and he explains how it works and how you add it. So, like a good programmer, I just copy-pasted it. Not exactly, because I did change some things. Because his equation is set on a set target and a set height, and then calculates it based on the gravity that your object adheres to. So what I did was, the range is actually based on a ray that's being cast from the middle of the camera forward until it hits something, or until it's reached a certain range, and that's where the end target is. And the height is then based on the height of that ray cast, plus a little bit based on how high you're aiming. So the higher you're aiming, the higher the arc will be. The lower you're aiming, the lower the arc will be. So it feels like a more natural shooting of a basketball. And it ended up being quite a lot of fun. It took me a little bit of tweaking, especially, the custom part of that equation. I had to change some things and debug some things, but it ended up working quite nicely. And of course, I ran into a lot of weird things along the way. Some ball deformations that I actually don't have on video. Like I made these ball racks for the 3-point shootout, and the balls that I placed into the rack, basically like I created an empty game object, and then I made the ball racks and then the balls on top of it. The balls, when I started playing, would then morph into these weird fucking American football type of things. But I don't know why that was, but I just deleted them and re-put in the prefabs, and it worked. I'm not quite sure what happened there. But this kind of weird things that you run into, like adjusting the raycast, how far you can shoot, making sure it shoots forward. And I ran into issues where it collided with my own character. So if my camera was too low and I was looking at myself in the middle, then it would stop the raycast at my character. And of course, that's not what you want. So I had to do some ignore raycast settings on my raycast. But it was all pretty easy, but it's all stuff that, you need to know how it works. And that's kind of what this prototyping is for. It's like getting super familiar with this engine. What can it do? What are the limitations? And, get a little bit more comfortable with adding these mathematical equations, because honestly, I fucking suck at math when I have to think of it on the fly. I am, however, very good at problem solving. So I am very good at Googling what I'm looking for and then applying that knowledge into my game. And I don't necessarily need to know exactly what that formula does. I need to know how to apply it. And I think that's the most important part about game design, unless you're, trying to make your own engine and shit like that, but that's a whole different ballgame. This is the point where I got game to feel okay. The camera was nice enough. The shooting worked well. So, I added some nice materials. I added some scoring UI to the hoops that I made. I made these janky basic shape hoops because I really didn't want to model anything yet, because I'm really terrible at modeling and it would take me forever. But it is something I want to delve into at some point. I just want to focus on pure gameplay right now. and not really on modeling or anything like that, right? So just pure prototyping. I wanted to feel fun. Of course, having a round rim will add an extra dimension to it, but it is what it is for now. So yeah, I added some basket. I added a dynamic 3-point line that will show you an indication of whether or not your shot is from outside of the 3-point line or within the 3-point line. And then if it's within, it doesn't count. So basic materials applied. I added a 3-point contest. I added a UI so you can exit the game or reset the game. And I added some text to the UI, and I also added a crosshair that indicates whether or not you are aiming at something within range, so it will calculate properly. And that's pretty much it for this week, and I'm pretty happy with it, honestly. I've made some mistakes with the code. Obviously, code is never really done. Some responsibility is not in the right places. I did refactor some of it, but I probably need to make some sort of UI management system, because now there's too much logic inside of the specific UI things that don't belong there. And also some of the other objects have too much responsibility. I need to make one separate place where I handle all the input. I need to have one separate place where I handle all the UI menu shit and stuff like that. And then the specific objects only need to do what they are supposed to do, you know, like object-oriented style. If you don't know solid, then you should look it up. Single responsibility is a thing. And it's important. If you don't adhere to those same things, then it can get real messy real quick. So refactor whenever you can. If you fix something, you're happy with it, go do some refactoring, because it will help you in the long run, especially with bigger projects. But for now, this is just prototyping, so it's not that big of a deal. So what are my lessons learned for all this? I think too much perfectionism. I have this issue where I focus on the wrong thing for longer. That doesn't matter for the prototype. So I had something working, like I could play the 3-point contest and I could reset it, but it bothered me that you couldn't free roam afterwards. It was literally just you came into the game, UI popped up, start 3-point contest, and then you could press escape and then reset it. That's not what I wanted. I wanted the person to come into the game, be able to shoot around for a bit, and then walk over this like trigger and then start the contest and then restart it within that same game. I spent a bit too much time on that, but I thought it would be fun for the prototype, so I'm happy that I did it, but it also maybe wasn't necessary for the prototype itself. That's a lesson learned. Yeah, I need to just time box myself better about, okay, I'm going to do this within a certain amount of time. If it doesn't work, try to move on or fix something. And I need to get a little bit better at writing my notes. I've actually taken pretty good notes this time around, but it could be more organized as usual. And I need to start naming my videos, because I try to film everything that I do, and there are some 4-hour-long videos unnamed and a couple of shorter ones, and I have to go through that. Yeah, that sucks. I should really name them and maybe make notes in my Word document that I have for this video and actually put some timestamps in. But yeah, I don't know. Just naming them would be good enough. But that's that. Like I said, I have a public Trello board where I actually have all my to-do tasks for this prototype. I have my prototype ideas. You guys can actually check that out. You can leave comments and ideas and suggestions or bugs if you find any, because you know you can actually play it. The link is down below for the download. Go check it out. Let me know what you think of it. I think it's cool. I mean, it's not great, it's simple, but it's pretty fun. So what's next? First of all, since I was late with this video and I have my deadline for getting this house ready in February, so I'm going to take 2 weeks for the next video. That gives me 1 week of prototyping, 1 week of editing, because I can't do both, because I need to have time to work on my house. But what is next? I want to tighten up the movement controls a bit. It feels a bit floatish at time, and I absolutely hate that in video games where you're supposed to have tight controls. I want, when I push left, I go left. When I release it, I stop immediately. No weird slowing down, just I want tight controls. Tighten up the camera. The camera is too cinematic right now. It's more like for a third-person adventure game, and that's fine for when you're just roaming around. So maybe I'll add another over-the-shoulder specific camera that is for shooting, so that you have the cinematic-ish camera when you're moving around and an over-shoulder for shooting. I want to add some enemies, add some cool attacks with a basketball. That would be cool. So not just like this weird, not just this throw that I have, but like, you know, whacking people on top of the head with a basketball would be pretty freaking cool. Maybe add some explosions. I really want to add some particles. I know it doesn't add anything for the gameplay, but it's fucking cool and I want to add some fun. And I definitely want to add a sound effect that's like, I almost got sidetracked with sound because I downloaded a bunch of sound files that I wanted to add. But it's like, no, that's not important for the prototype. But one sound effect I do want to add is a bounce, like a random bounce sound for the basketball that is played every time it gets collided with something. And I'll probably fuck it up. I'll probably spend too much time on it, but I want it because that will be fun. It'll be hilarious, right? So add some enemies and do some cool stuff with that. And honestly, maybe not for next week, but a cool feature I thought I wanted to do is like dunk. Because imagine if you can dunk the basket, but imagine if you can like do a big ass dunk ground slam or something like that on a group of enemies. That would be pretty dope. But we'll see how far we get. And maybe, you know, different ball types like fireball, frost balls, death balls. I don't know, you like cool spell effects or something like that that do different debuffs. But that's maybe for the future. Oh, and I also want to follow one of the recommendations that I've been getting on a new input system, because there's controller support now, but it's a little bit, you know, I want to use a new input system because it's there and I like using the latest things. But yeah, that's really all for this week's devlog video. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Check out the links below for checking out my Trello board, checking out the prototype and play it for yourself. Leave a comment below what you think of this video, what you thought of the prototype if you played it. Thumbs up the video if you liked it. Subscribe if you want to see more. And see you in 2 weeks. Pancake out.